Representative Jared Moskowitz locked eyes with Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, and in that instant the entire hearing room seemed to freeze. What started as a polite exchange turned into something else, something no one could quite name. You could feel it, the tension, the hesitation, the unspoken weight of what they were all avoiding. Moskowitz's tone was calm but sharp. He asked a simple question, the kind that slices through official smiles. "Where are you going?" The witness fumbled, said it wasn't lunch, insisted it wasn't the president either, and yet wouldn't say a word more. It should have ended there. But then, out of nowhere, Moskowitz dropped the name everyone had been tiptoeing around.
Attorney General's coming in 4 weeks.
Fantastic, but still, we're not doing that this week. The week we're having votes on the Epstein thing. So, Pam Bondi gives the influencers, these Republican influencers, a binder. It says Part 1 of the Epstein files. Don't know if you saw it. It was quite spectacular. The Attorney General then says the Epstein list is on her desk. Then DOJ issues a memo, says there is no list. Then, you have any questions about any of that? We've had no hearings on any of that at all. That, the list is on my desk, then there is no list. Then we gave binders to Republican influencers. This committee said no questions on any of how that transpired at the Department of Justice. Then hold on.
Well, it sounds like you're going to in the next few weeks. So that's a jolly good thing.
Mr. Farage, we can talk soon, but not yet. Okay.
Right.
So then the president comes out and says the whole thing's a hoax. He blasts his own base. He blames Barack Obama. I mean, he hasn't been president for a very long time. Republicans then in committee vote against the release in the Rules Committee. Then Republicans refuse to go back in the Rules Committee because they're getting blasted for their vote, getting crushed by their own base. Congress leaves a day early. Then the administration sends the Deputy Attorney General to meet with Maxwell in jail. He happens to be Trump's former personal attorney. She says something favorable about the president. Miraculously, she gets transferred to a minimum security prison. The president starts talking about how he has the right to pardon her if he wanted to. The leaks to the Wall Street Journal then stop. We come back from break. We have the Massey petition. Comer does a document dump where 97% of these documents are already public. How long has he had those documents? Why hasn't he released them for the last 6 weeks? Does it the day of the vote. Then Republicans drop a non-binding resolution trying to kill the Massey discharge petition. The White House said passing the Massey discharge petition is a hostile act. Wow. That's a lot of distraction and deflection and misinformation. Wait, passing a discharge petition to release the Epstein files, the White House said would be a hostile act. Nope, we have no questions about that. But why? Why is it that we're spending so much political capital to keep this list from coming out? You think the list should come out? You think we should know the people who dealt with Mr. Epstein, Mr. Farage?
I thought I was coming to a hearing on free speech, not process.
Oh, well, listen, but here's the good...
It sounds like you're discussing process.
No. Do you think the list should come out?
I have no opinion on it. I don't know at all.
So we have victims that were sexually abused by potentially people in power, and we don't know who's on the list.
I'm very happy.
Hold on, Mr. Fresh. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know who's on the list. We don't know if the president is or is not. I'm not going to say he is or isn't. I'm just going to say these are weird behaviors. We don't know that there aren't other people in Congress that are on the list. Right? We have no idea. Do you think the list should come out? You think people in power should be held to account for these victims who have been sexually abused and assaulted? You think the list should come out?
I think that I'm very happy to come to a different hearing where you talk about legal process.
Okay.
But today,
Will the gentleman yield for a quick question?
Were
you aware that he has already called for the Epstein file to be released? It has been reported that he has called for it to be released.
Oh yeah, right here, just to refresh your memory.
Yeah, but
I happen to have this.
But that's not
How random.
But that is not. Look, you can ask me if you like about
Do you agree
social
with
security
yourself?
policy.
Do you agree with yourself?
We are here to discuss free speech.
Hold on, it's awkward for your lunch after this? Do you agree with yourself?
No, it isn't at all.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious. This committee has jurisdiction over the Department of Justice.
Yeah.
Why have we allowed Comer to cover this up for the last couple of months?
As I said,
why is this committee not taking
I said
jurisdiction?
6 weeks ago that we will have the FBI director in, we will have the Attorney General in, and we are doing that in 2 weeks. You can go through that whole list. That whole list, you can do whatever you want to do with, I got lots of questions for the FBI director, including including the whistleblower who came forward and told him that Adam Schiff leaked classified information. I want to ask him about that as well as the issues you all want to ask him about. That's why he's coming, so we can ask all these questions and follow the process, as Mr. Farage just talked about.
Mr.
The
Chairman,
gentleman from Virginia.
unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent?
I'd like to enter the political article into the record that Mr. Farage said the Epstein file should be released.
Without objection. The gentleman from Virginia is recognized.
I thank the chairman. I want to talk about censorship tools that are being used by Europe and protectionist measures that have major consequences for U.S. companies and free expression.
Have you heard about the Epstein situation going on here? The entire room shifted. Nervous laughter, forced smiles, shuffling papers. And that's how the most awkward moment in that hearing became the spark for one of the biggest political mysteries of the year. Moskowitz wasn't supposed to ask that. The agenda said free speech. But he had watched months of avoidance, and he wasn't about to let it slide again. 9 months of hearings, and not one appearance from the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, who had claimed, on record, that the Epstein list was sitting on her desk. 9 months of silence from the Department of Justice, no documents, no follow-ups, no answers. Kash Patel, the FBI director, was scheduled to appear, but that was always 2 weeks away. It was always 2 weeks away. The kind of delay that buys time, not progress. The committee had jurisdiction over the DOJ, yet nothing moved. The list, the files, the timeline, everything remained in the dark. Moskowitz's patience had run out, and you could hear it in his voice. "We've had hearings on everything except the thing that matters," he said. "And that's the one we can't seem to get to." The hearing room was quiet, almost too quiet. You could sense that even the people pretending not to listen were now paying attention. Then came the moment that turned frustration into disbelief. Pam Bondi, the Attorney General who had promised transparency, had reportedly given Republican influencers a binder. A thick, glossy binder labeled Part 1 of the Epstein files. And then, a day later, the DOJ released a memo saying, there is no list. One day, it's on her desk. The next, it doesn't exist. The contradictions didn't just raise questions, they shredded credibility. Was this miscommunication, or was someone deliberately rewriting the story? Because if there was no list, what exactly was inside that binder? Why were political influencers getting early access while Congress, the body tasked with oversight, was left in the dark? Moskowitz didn't need to say it out loud, but everyone in the room understood what he was implying. "This isn't transparency," he said quietly. "This is choreography." And then the political theater began to spiral. As the controversy spread, the White House tried to shut it down, calling the entire issue a distraction. The president's allies started saying it was all overblown, a hoax, even blaming old administrations for the chaos. But the reaction inside their own party was worse. The base wasn't buying it. Supporters flooded social media demanding answers. Congressional aides were deleting posts, scrambling to control the narrative. When the Rules Committee finally voted on whether to release the files, key members voted against it, and then vanished. Some skipped the next session entirely. Congress adjourned early, citing scheduling conflicts, but everyone knew why. The public outrage had begun to turn inward. Even loyal members were whispering about panic inside the party ranks. "This isn't about politics anymore," one staffer told reporters. "It's about who's on that list." But what happened next made even the skeptics pause. Just days after the vote, the Deputy Attorney General, who had once been a personal lawyer for the president, paid a quiet visit to a federal prison. The inmate, Ghislaine Maxwell. That alone raised eyebrows. But what followed shocked even insiders. Maxwell was suddenly transferred to a minimum security facility, despite the seriousness of her conviction. Almost overnight, leaks about the case that had been flowing to the press simply stopped. And then, almost casually, the White House mentioned that the president had the power to issue a pardon if he chose to. It was like a sequence of dominoes, each one falling in eerie silence. A prison meeting, a transfer, a pause in leaks, a pardon tease. If you connected the dots, it didn't paint a clear picture, but it didn't look innocent either. When Congress reconvened, there was new chaos. Representative Thomas Massie introduced a discharge petition, a procedural move to force the release of the Epstein files. It was a bold attempt to go around leadership, but instead of engaging, the majority responded with a non-binding resolution meant to kill the effort. On the very same day, the DOJ dumped thousands of pages of documents online, claiming transparency. Headlines screamed, "Epstein files released." But when analysts looked closer, the truth was embarrassing. 97% of those documents were already public. Old filings, duplicates, redacted pages, nothing new. It was transparency theater, a show for cameras, not accountability. "They think we're too distracted to notice," Moskowitz said, "but we noticed." And once again, the public was left wondering, who's orchestrating this, and what are they protecting? As the dust settled, a new narrative began to take shape, one not driven by partisanship, but by pattern. Pam Bondi said the list existed. The DOJ said it didn't. A deputy AG met with a convicted trafficker. A transfer followed. A document dump misled the public. Kash Patel stayed silent, citing ongoing investigations. Each step, by itself, could be explained away. But together, it looked like a dance of deflection. Each move perfectly timed to distract from the one before it. The deeper issue wasn't just who was on the list. It was who was controlling the information about it. Oversight had turned into a guessing game. And the people holding the pieces weren't talking to understand why this matters. You have to think like an investigator. Every record has a chain of custody. Who created it? Who handled it? Who stored it? If an attorney general says, "The list is on my desk," then later her department says, "No such list exists," that isn't semantics. That's a breach in the chain. It means either the document was removed, destroyed, or never existed at all. And in each scenario, someone holds responsibility. When those same files, or versions of them, end up in partisan binders sent to influencers instead of Congress, it stops being about transparency. It becomes a messaging campaign. The goal shifts from truth to narrative control. And that's the part the public rarely sees, the difference between a release and a performance. Still, there are legitimate reasons the DOJ might hesitate. Protecting victims' identities, preserving grand jury secrecy, safeguarding ongoing investigations. These are valid constraints. But that's not what anyone is disputing. The issue is inconsistency. If the DOJ wanted to follow the law and protect privacy, it could have offered a secure briefing to cleared members of Congress, allowed an independent review under confidentiality, or released redacted versions that hide victim information but reveal enablers. Those mechanisms exist. They're used in cases involving national security, financial fraud, even intelligence leaks. The refusal to use them here isn't about protocol, it's about control. And every time someone in authority dodges a direct question, the credibility of the entire process erodes a little more. While political insiders argue procedure, survivors watch from the sidelines, waiting for promises to mean something. Many of them spoke up only after years of silence, convinced that justice would finally catch up. Each delay, each reversal, reopens wounds. When public officials call the entire issue a hoax or dismiss it as political noise, it's not just bureaucratic, it's personal. Every evasion feels like a betrayal. "We were told there would be accountability," one survivor told a reporter. "All we've seen is paperwork and press releases." These stories aren't abstract. They represent lives interrupted, trust broken, and faith in the system fading. And for every day the list remains hidden, the silence grows louder. Real oversight shouldn't be complicated. 3 simple steps could change everything. First, a secure classified briefing for the Oversight Committee, where members and cleared staff can review the materials under confidentiality. Second, a complete chain of custody logs showing who accessed the files, when, and why. And third, an independent review, an inspector general or a special counsel, tasked with verifying whether the process followed legal standards or political convenience. None of that compromises privacy. It simply documents accountability. And yet, month after month, those steps remain undone. Instead, we get more headlines, more leaks, more deflections. The kind of noise that keeps people arguing while nothing changes. Public pressure, though, changes everything. Congress rarely acts out of moral urgency. It acts when voters won't stop watching. Every phone call to a representative, every trending hashtag, every local op-ed demanding a hearing makes it harder to bury the story. That's why stories like this matter on platforms like this. Awareness is leverage. When millions start asking why the DOJ keeps contradicting itself, or why a list can exist and vanish in the same week, officials can't hide behind jargon anymore. They have to answer. And accountability, once started, is contagious. It spreads from committees to courts, from journalists to citizens. It forces clarity out of confusion that there's also a myth that releasing these files would cause chaos. That's false. Responsible transparency is not reckless. Names of victims should be redacted. Sensitive evidence can remain sealed. But financial records, travel logs, and communications of the enablers, the people who facilitated or funded abuse, can and should be public. Not out of vengeance, but out of necessity. Because secrecy protects predators. Sunlight prevents repetition. And the longer this case lingers behind bureaucratic walls, the more it signals that some people are simply untouchable. The center of this entire chain is one truth. Accountability only happens when stories stay alive. Representative Jared Moskowitz didn't bring up Epstein to score points. He did it because the silence had gone on too long. Pam Bondi's binders, Kash Patel's pending appearance, the shifting stories from the DOJ, all of it adds up to one undeniable pattern. The more the public asks, the more the gatekeepers delay. But every delay fuels suspicion, and every contradiction turns whispers into headlines. That's why this moment matters. Because beneath the partisanship and the political theater is a question that cuts deeper than any hearing. If this list exists, why are we still pretending it doesn't? Think about the sequence. First, a binder. Then, denial. A prison visit. A transfer. A document dump. Each act timed perfectly to calm outrage before the next storm. It's too organized to be coincidence, too messy to be innocent. That's how misinformation spreads, not through lies, but through carefully timed confusion. People stop asking questions because the timeline feels too tangled to follow. But when you trace it step by step, the picture clears. And it's not pretty to where does that leave us? With a choice. Either accept the contradictions and move on, or demand the truth and keep pushing. Because truth rarely surfaces by accident. It's dragged out by persistence. And in a story like this, persistence is the only thing that scares the people holding the files. The goal isn't to speculate about names or fuel conspiracy. It's to restore the public's right to know. The victims deserve it. The country deserves it. And frankly, the people who keep dodging questions owe it that if you've watched this far, you already know this story won't end in one hearing. There will be more evasions, more promises, more claims that it's being handled. But stories only fade when people stop paying attention. So keep the focus alive. Share this video so the conversation doesn't die in committee. Subscribe if you want to follow every twist as it unfolds. Leave a comment about what you think transparency really means and what accountability should look like. Because the next time Representative Moskowitz, Pam Bondi, or Kash Patel sit in front of those microphones, the questions will be sharper, the patience shorter, and the audience much, much larger. And when the truth finally comes out, it'll be because people like you refuse to look away.